Goulburn Valley gold, luscious fruits now exotic. Goulburn Valley gold, the taste will drive you wild. Just taste those.
Peaches and apricot and pineapple, or pears and orange and passion fruit. It's juicy natural fruit.
And the only place it's sold is Goulburn Valley gold.
Yes, he's a four-time Olympian with 3 gold medals, a world champion, a motivator, the Executive General Manager of High Performance for Cricket Australia, and we show you his canned fruit ad. Drew Ginn, welcome to the show.
Nothing like coming in and being made to feel really serious, right?
You're the pineapple guy. Did you audition to be the singer up the front, or...?
I tried to. They wouldn't give it to me. I couldn't lip sync properly.
Did you have Goulburn Valley just, you know, hanging out of the cupboards?
I had a whole warehouse full of fruit. You know? And then the kids came along 5 years later and all the fruit was already gone, so that was the problem. I did a fruit commercial before I won a gold medal. That was the interesting part.
How long was the relationship with Goulburn Valley? It was quite a long time.
So 92, all the way through to 2000.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, extraordinary.
Yeah.
We will get to what's going on with you right now in cricket, but let's celebrate a little bit of what you have achieved, which is a mighty amount. 4 Olympics, should have been 5, a bad back in Sydney, stopped you there. 3 gold medals, Oarsome Foursome, obviously, and then 2 in pairs, coxless pairs as well. Do you sit back and remember those days fondly?
At this stage, no. I've had the moments where I've really enjoyed it when you've caught up with the crewmates, but right now, being in what I'm in with cricket, you're just so busy that you don't reflect on your athlete life. It actually feels like a long time ago, a bit of footage there. I was 21 years of age, I'm now 45, so the stories are getting better though.
Yeah, but you came into an established team, didn't you?
Yeah, I think the amazing thing for me at the time was the guys were all my sort of senior by sort of 7 to 10 years, and so the selectors actually made a nice joke when I got selected into the crew, which I brought the average age of the crew down significantly, which was nice. But James was my hero from school, he coached me at school. With Nick and Mike as well, so it was unbelievable times.
Do you have reunions at all? Footy clubs have 10 years.
We do. Christmas time, we get all the rowers together from that period, and I'm the fortunate young guy who gets to come along as well with my wife, so it's pretty impressive, yeah.
You won a pairs once where you had a dislocation in your back, didn't you? And there was a secret shadow, wasn't there, up in the grandstand?
Yeah,
Carsten
Forsling. So I signed the documentation for the doctor, for the replacement. He was hiding up behind a generator at the start, and he was there to jump in the boat for me. So I'd actually ruptured my disc in the heat row, and this was in the final that he was sitting up the start line waiting.
You said James was your hero, James Tompkins. You won 2 gold medals with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 96 was a really special first time, but obviously in 2004, after 8 years, and the injury and the heartache of Sydney not making it was extraordinary. He's been a great teammate over many years.
You talk about your back, but let's talk about the sport, because this is a sport where you go, Drew, to complete exhaustion. Every time you compete, it's maximum heart rate. And with your, with your body as well, we look at footballers who are tall, they always sort of retire a little bit earlier and have problems down the track as well. I mean, does it take a real toll on your body? Do you feel it now?
Yeah, I can touch my toes now, like this. I can't do anything straight, though. No, the wear and tear comes back to haunt you. I mean, we've all been athletes going through that sort of stuff. I think the one for me is the physical stuff is you just never know. You're never going to be back at that level of physicality and confidence in your body. But, the knee plays up, the ankle plays up, the ribs, the back, all that sort of stuff. So it takes a toll.
Who was the most mentally tough athlete that you trained or competed with?
In the boat with? Mike Mackay.
Yep.
Yeah, so he was the most determined, most competitive, most aggressive. I've come across a few people inside cricket that I reckon are just as equal in terms of competitiveness. But he was the guy that really set the standards.
And Drew, of course, now you're taking over a high-performance role with Australian cricket, and early in the job, you said that you would take some of your rowing lessons into that role and you would get the bowlers maybe to bowl at less intensity. But Mitchell Starc, of course, responded.
Oh, yes. So, we've caused a beat up here, haven't we? It's extraordinary. I've never met Mitch. Apparently we're at loggerheads.
He did respond, and he said that, I feel you've got to let go at full capacity to really sort of feel yourself. So where does that stand? Have you spoken to Mitchell, or is that your belief, to try and bring some of the lessons of rowing into cricket?
I think there's a really nice opportunity when you're having good success. So that bowling cohort was 12 years in the making. So JL saw me the day after the article came through, and what we talked about only 2 weeks before was don't just review things when they're going poorly. review when you're at your peak. So my question of methodology was, are we doing the very best for these bowlers in the long term? Mitch is unbelievable, all the bowlers are sensational. I'm not the expert, but I do know that when I've looked at bowling, to use the ranges, and we do workarounds in the States, so shadow bowling, remedial bowling, all this sort of stuff, to use the ranges for me makes a lot of sense.
Can you understand why maybe they're a little bit sceptical? They've had Pat Howard in that role and he's brought his rugby sort of philosophies and they didn't always welcome that. And now it's sort of like the equivalent of Dave Warner going down to the Olympic rowers and say, do this in the boat before Tokyo.
Careful which corner you paint me in here. I'm not the sort of person to ever tell an athlete what to do. So that's the first part I think is really important. The one for me is always question what you're doing. And so if we can encourage that for all the players, we've had a great series, obviously with the Ashes and all that sort of stuff, where the players have gone exceptionally well. The girls have gone really well. So for me, you use that opportunity to really reflect on what you're doing and just keep finding edges to keep going forward. That's what it's about.
Have you had the opportunity to get face-to-face with all the states? I know the one big thing with national team here and the states feel left out sometimes. You've just been to Tasmania,
Absolutely.
so have you had the opportunity to get in front of everyone?
I have. I've done the whole roadshow, call it a roadshow. 8 weeks it took me to get around. The reason why it took 8 weeks was I just didn't want to be there for a day or a half a day. So I spent sort of 2 days in most locations. The benefit of coming from Cricket Tas for 2 years as high performance manager was they saw me as one of their own. So there was lots of good things, but there was lots of challenges. And I think the real one is the control or the element of tick the box. You know, there's been too much of that's been done in the sport. So I think from a leadership standpoint, what we want to do is set up really good sort of standards, but also use best practice in the States. So collaboration's key. Use a few buzzwords, but if we can get everyone working together, imagine what the system will be like.
Yeah, you said when you first came into cricket, you said, I know nothing about the game. What's been the biggest eye-opener?
Great people. Doing lots of activity.
Thanks.
Great people doing lots of activity. You did text me before. No, I'm joking. Now, great people doing lots of activity. My question is, are we truly making the progress we want to make? So it's a luxurious sport. You know, there's lots of money in the sport, lots of opportunity in the sport. The players are well looked after now. But are we truly getting the outcomes we want for that? And if I look at sort of what New Zealand did through the World Cup, on far less resources, I like to use those sort of examples of how we get better. So I think we've got everything we need. The system's well set up. It's just a matter of making it count now.
Just on funding, Tokyo's next year.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on Australia's sport at the moment and funding with certain sports?
Diabolical, if I was to be fair. I think the funding cycle of every year, every 2 years, chasing medals, chasing outcomes. I was taught as an athlete, focus on the process and the outcome will take care of itself. I think what's happened through the Sports Commission, and it's not a massive criticism, but they're not doing the rules of engagement that we get taught about.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of pressure on a lot of athletes, and cricket's a high-profile sport now. We're seeing the immense impact of high pressure and lots of visibility. So, for me, focus on the process is the key.
I noticed, of course, you were at Cricket Tasmania, where obviously you had a lot to do with George Bailey's batting stance. There it is. This is all your idea?
It's just being a bit cheeky. It's okay. So, look, you've got to give a different target to the bowlers, right? You want to mix it up a little bit. But interestingly, on the back of that, he was actually batting sensationally well. And now I don't know technically, but he was playing with some things, and I thought it was actually pretty courageous to do things actually out in the field, because it's one of the fearful things of actually changing when you go into competition, isn't it?
Did you ever jump into the boat the wrong way just to upset?
We went the other way. It was bloody horrible, though. I would never have done what George did and gone and raced.
You just touched on the pressure there of elite athletes, and we're seeing more and more cricketers putting up their hands, and they're struggling with their mental health. As a former athlete, can you relate at all? Did you ever suffer from anxiety or sleeplessness or anything like that?
Yeah, I was anxious coming out here tonight. Yes, I think we all do. I think every single athlete, that when you're under the microscope, the difference for us is every 4 years. So that's a huge amount of pressure. But what I'm noticing in the cricket space for these players is they're under the microscope the whole time. And if you look at the international players and coaches, they're going full 12 months of the year. So I think it's great that these things are happening. And I think it's great that conversations are happening and there's more support and more action than ever before.
All right, Drew, we have to let you go because you've got a lot of work to do, because Australia A is about 8 for 40.
That's Ben Oliver. Ben Oliver's got that job. I've handed it on.
Good to see that team's going at half pace as well.
20%.
Lovely to talk to you, Drew, again.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks for dropping in. Coming up, our champ of the week is next.